Welcome everyone. We're gonna get started here because we have all of you nice folks came on time. So we'll let the stragglers roll in and we'll just get started. So that's okay, no problem at all. Welcome. I see some familiar faces, so thanks again for coming again. We like familiar faces and we like new faces too, so next time bring your friends that haven't been here. So welcome. This is Appetite for Life, a program brought to you by the Nutrition Research Institute, which is located in Kannapolis on the North Carolina Research Campus. Thanks to Dr. Robert Mock and the entire team at Johnson & Wales University for hosting this event, and a special thanks to Dr. Tamika Russell and the students who assist behind the scenes here. Through tonight's program, we are celebrating Brain Awareness Week. Did anybody know that this was Brain Awareness Week? I hope so, because good. All right, so Brain Awareness Week is a joint effort by the Dana Institute and Society for Neuroscience designed to promote public and personal benefits of neuroscience research. The NRI has several scientists whose research has a focus on cognitive development and decline. So tonight we will cook and discuss foods with nutrients related to brain health. So with that, I'm just going to start off by saying that in general, yes, we have specific nutrients that we're studying that are related to brain health, but in general, an overall healthy diet that we talk about again and again and again and again and again is one that's full of fruits and vegetables and whole grains and good fats and lean proteins, specifically plant-based protein. So eating those things is going to promote overall health and therefore brain health as well. So I'm going to let Megan get us started, and she's going to tell us what we're making tonight, which is great brain health food, and then we'll just kind of talk through some of the good and beneficial points of all those things.
Can you introduce yourself, please?
I'm Steph Saullo, sorry. I'm Steph Saullo. I'm the consultant dietitian at the Nutrition Research Institute, and Megan Lambert here at Johnson & Wales University. Sorry about that. Now you know who we are.
I feel like we've done this so many times now. Everybody knows who we are. Right?
Yeah.
You know who we are. Well, welcome everybody. Great to have you here. Good to see you. Good to see some familiar faces and some new faces. Is this their first time here at Johnson & Wales? Yay! Wonderful. Welcome. As Steph said, my name is Megan Lambert. I teach here in the culinary department, and I primarily teach nutrition right now. I started here 13 years ago, and I started teaching pastry. It's a long story how I switched to nutrition. I actually started in nutrition my undergrad and did my dietetic internship to be an RD, and then went into pastry and then found my way back slowly after a lot of years of pastries and not great nutrition. But I've come back to it, and I've realized for myself how important it is, for my son how important it is, and for all of our students to understand how important nutrition is and the food that they make for their customers and being able to provide good, healthy choices that are still really delicious. So that's sort of my philosophy and why I'm doing what I'm doing. So today, I love the idea of brain health, and Steph was telling me about some of the specific foods and nutrients we're going to talk about, and she was saying, whole grains, berries, fish, eggs, and I said, that sounds like breakfast, because I'm a breakfast convert. Who eats breakfast every day out there? Oh, most of you, good. So I don't have to tell you how important it is to eat breakfast. And I didn't always eat breakfast every day, and so, a few years ago I started taking more time with what I eat in my nutrition and began to eat breakfast, and now I can't do anything without breakfast. I have to eat breakfast every day. But being busy, it can be kind of a chore to get a good, hot, healthy breakfast on the table every day. So I've come up with, a lot of things that I use myself in order to be able to do this every day. So one of the things we're going to make is baked oatmeal with blueberries. And Steph is going to tell us the great stuff that blueberries do for us and the whole grains. But this is a real easy dish to make. It's something that can be frozen and then pulled out just when you need a nice hot breakfast. The next dish we're going to make is we're going to do what I call an everyday egg sandwich. And in the past, we've been told that maybe eggs have too much fat or too much cholesterol if we're going to eat every day. And now I think the thinking has come around in terms of the amount of fat, and even, we don't worry so much about cholesterol that we're eating in our diet. We worry about it in our blood, but not so much in the food that we're eating anymore. So that's really nice for me because I do an egg sandwich quite frequently. And then kind of a little special breakfast food, although maybe it shouldn't be so special. We're going to do another sandwich with smoked salmon and avocado, red onions, and a little lime vinaigrette. So that's going to be maybe a little bit more of a special breakfast treat. But you're going to see that's going to be the easiest thing that we make. So that should be my everyday breakfast. And then, of course, we've got a nice smoothie for you. So I think this is going to be a really fun, really delicious one to do today. So for the oatmeal, I'm going to start with that. I have my whole oats, and I like the rolled oats rather than the steel cut, although I imagine you could use steel cut in this if you like it. I think it would work just fine. So I've got some oats, some baking powder, some salt, and I'm just kind of tossing those together. You don't have to do anything fancy there. And then over here I have milk, and I have some melted butter, some honey, some egg, and a little vanilla, and we're just going to whisk that together. So I've got my blueberries, quite a lot of blueberries, and about 2/3 of them go into the dish on the bottom.
Sounds like your blueberries are frozen.
They are frozen, yeah, and I kept them frozen. I use these frozen blueberries a lot because fresh blueberries can be a little more expensive. They're not always good. The frozen blueberries are always good. They pick them when they are perfectly ripe and fresh. They freeze them right away, and they hold really well. So that's something that I use a lot.
Which means they may be more nutritious than the fresh ones. So don't be afraid of the frozen fruit. It's good for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And nothing is added to it. So I think sometimes we worry a little bit about canned fruit with the added sugar that they put into it if it's in a syrup. But just plain frozen berries are great. So I keep those on hand for lots of things. This, as well as the smoothie that we're going to make later. You want to tell us about the blueberries and the oats and what they do for us?
Yeah, so whole grains. Oats are whole grain. Anybody know the difference between a whole grain and a refined grain? Well, I'll tell you. A whole grain has all the parts of the grain, and a refined grain is missing some of them. So during processing, we remove 2 parts of the grain, and with that, we're removing some fiber, most of the fiber, and we are removing also vitamins, minerals, and antioxidants. So that's why we stress whole grains, because the refined ones have less of all those great nutrients in them. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't eat refined grains. We should aim to eat half of our grains in a day to be whole, and that means you can pick and choose which ones you want to be whole. Personally, I do not like whole wheat pasta, so I choose to eat white pasta, but I'll pick my whole grains in other places. So the good thing about whole grains is that we're talking about brain health, right? So first, whole grains are associated with decreased inflammation, and inflammation is one of those things that is pretty much shows up among a lot of diseases. So if we can keep inflammation down, we can keep health up. Whole grains are also associated with decreased total cholesterol and lower LDL cholesterol, that bad cholesterol. And I know you guys are saying, well, brain health, but doesn't that sound like heart health? But yes, so if we have an overall great heart and cardiovascular system, that means better blood flow, and better blood flow means we can get that blood to the brain better, right? So better cardiovascular health equals better brain health. And if you have high cholesterol, that's a major risk factor for heart disease, which also increases your risk for stroke. So whole grains are great. Blueberries, so those are one of the foods that has been studied at the Nutrition Research Institute. So Dr. Cheatham is studying blueberries among the older population, and the initial studies are done, but they're still working through the analyses. But we're showing that there is some improvement in processing speed. So blueberry intake is associated with improved processing speed, which means your brain works faster. And even if it seems like it's just a small amount, I think they're showing like 60 milliseconds or something. That's actually a long time for your brain. And they're also showing, although it's not confirmed yet, but there may be some association with the blueberry intake slowing down that cognitive decline that we see with dementia and Alzheimer's. So thumbs up for blueberries.
Very good. And you know, another thing I was thinking about to connect this, and there's some research showing us that it's not necessarily the research on the nutrients, but research in just eating breakfast in general, right?
Yeah.
You know, kids who eat breakfast are able to focus better at school. So this is just, I think, a really great brain demo all around.
Yeah, I think most of the real conclusive evidence is in kids and breakfast. I think among the adult population, the research is sort of wishy-washy with sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But, you know, 15% of Americans don't eat breakfast. And it seems like most of you are eating breakfast, so that's great. But I like to tell people to eat breakfast because some people tend to overeat later in the day if they don't eat breakfast, especially if you're thinking, oh, I need to eat less calories because I want to lose weight. But that's not really how it works. You tend to really set yourself up for failure if you're skipping breakfast for that particular reason. Yeah, sure.
Is there a difference in how the brain processes sugar versus honey versus agave?
So the question was, is there a difference between how the body processes sugar? And the answer is no. All types of sugar are processed the same way. So, you know, they have a different, what we call glycemic index. So they make the blood sugar go up more or less quickly depending on what kind of sugar that is. But it doesn't mean that it's not processed the same way. So it's going to go in as sugar and it's going to come out. It's going to get broken down into glucose, and that's what the body is going to use. Yeah.
So when you drink or eat foods that have artificial sweeteners in it, does that really trick the brain to make it think that it's still getting a regular sweetener versus the artificial sweetener?
So the question was, if we eat artificial sweeteners, does it trick the brain into thinking that we're actually getting sweeteners? I think the research is not quite there yet. I think there's some evidence to show that you do think you're getting sugar, but then there's other evidence to say that you may not be getting that sugar and then you want to eat more sugar later. So I think there's research on both ends.
Yeah, that's what I've heard, is that the research is mixed.
Is she using honey or maple syrup?
I used honey today. You guys saw how thick it was. I had that in the fridge as well, so it took me a minute to get it whisked in there. And then I put my melted butter in. And one thing that's going to happen if you use melted butter in this, because your milk and eggs are kind of cold, it's going to set up again when you whisk it in. But it'll be, you know, distributed throughout your milk. So it'll get in there. And once we put it into the oven, it'll be just fine.
Megan, do you ever make baked oatmeal in the crock pot?
You know, I don't usually do it in the crock pot, but I know a lot of people do. And that's a real easy one to do. I sometimes will just make a big pot of oatmeal. I'll just cook it on the stove and then portion it out into my little portions and put it into the freezer so that when I'm ready for breakfast, I just grab one container or one bag and then warm it up in the microwave. And the baked oatmeal worked just fine for that. And I imagine the hot oatmeal would do really well too.
Yeah, funny story. I used to make oatmeal ahead of time in grad school, and I didn't think to heat it up. I ate it cold.
Well, a lot of people do the overnight
Some people
oats
it's
as
so
well, and they eat
gross.
them cold.
Oops, sorry, I ate it in the car on the way to my internship. I didn't have anything else to eat it up with, so.
Yeah, I know the overnight oats people do, and they leave them cold. So I just pulled out a few blueberries to sprinkle on top just to make it look pretty, and then I'm going to pop this into the oven, and it's going to get nice and golden brown. I would say that's the thing that I liked about this dish versus the crock pot, is this gets real nice and brown and crunchy around the edges, so I like that.
Do you have to adjust the dry ingredients based on what type of milk you use, like fat-free, which is more water content, versus?
I wouldn't think so. You might, and again, you could play with the amounts of sugar that you put in here and the amounts of butter you put in here. Frankly, the recipe that I found had a little more butter in it, and although I love butter, I thought maybe it was just a little too buttery, and so I've reduced the butter and I've reduced the sugar a little bit. I did this at home with maple syrup and it worked well. You could use regular sugar if you want to. If you're, real sensitive to sugar or you don't want the sugar and you wanted to use an artificial or a Splenda or a stevia or something, that would work fine too, because the sugar's not really having much of a function in this dish. It's just sweetening. So
Our question was for anyone that didn't hear is, if you change the milk, if you use a 2% or a whole or a soy or whatever, does it have any effect on the other ingredient ratios? And the answer from Megan was no.
What about almond milk instead of?
Almond milk or too.
yeah,
It's just
almond,
for-
soy,
to make the oats need to absorb something. The other thing I wanted to mention, Megan mentioned steel cut oats. So the nutritional value between rolled oats or even the quick cooking oats and steel cut oats is pretty much the same. So if you prefer one over the other, it doesn't really matter. Sometimes it comes down to a textural thing, whether you like something chewier or a little more sturdy. So if you're toying between one of the three, it doesn't matter much.
Yeah, I've become a real oatmeal snob since I started eating breakfast. I like the really thick, chewy rolled oats, but I don't like the steel cut oats, and I definitely don't like them.
Steel cut oats take quite a bit more time
Long
to
time
cook.
to cook. Yeah.
Yeah, or you can do them in the crock pot or something, yeah, too. Yeah.
What other fruits are good for you besides the blueberry?
What other fruits are good for us? All fruits are good for us. I don't think there's a bad fruit out there. And the thing is we talk about blueberries and we talk about berries, and they're frequently on the quote unquote superfood list. And they're on the list because they have so many nutrients and they have antioxidants, and that's sort of why they're on the list. Now, they all have their own unique nutrient profile or antioxidant profile, so it's good. I think I've said this before, if you've been to one of these presentations before, it sounds a little cliche, but eat the rainbow, and then we say that for a reason, because each color has its own set of antioxidant components that come with it. So it's important that we want to get a variety of nutrients and antioxidants that we have to eat from all the different color groups. Yes?
Do you have to use blueberries, or can you use any fruit? Does blueberries
We have
just
to use
hold up
blueberries.
everything else?
No, you could really use just about any fruit in this one, I think. I think I listed a couple of options there, but bananas and walnuts would be really great. Apples and cinnamon would be really great. I have trouble with this burn every time. Apples and cinnamon, and even just mango would be good, all kinds of things. So you could do any of the frozen fruits or fresh fruits. Great.
If you're using the steel cut oatmeal, do you have to change the baking time and the oven temperature?
You might. I think it also might benefit from doing that kind of overnight, maybe putting the dish together overnight, leaving it in the fridge, and then just baking it in the morning or ahead of time. I think that they will absorb some liquid, so that would work. Generally, if you're cooking on the stove top, you would need more time to cook the steel cut oats. I'm not sure that in this application it would be much different, because it's got a pretty long bake time anyway. You can always just taste it and see if they're nicely done, and if they're not done, back into the oven. If it starts to brown, you could put a little foil on top, or lower the oven temp a bit so it's not browning, but it's still cooking. That's a great question. Okay, so I'm gearing up to do our omelets. And so my everyday egg sandwich, and I do eat an egg sandwich, maybe not every day, but maybe every other day. And so for Christmas, my parents got us this little egg sandwich maker, which I love. I don't mean this to be a commercial, but it's really, really handy, and I like it. Even as a chef, I like gadgets, right? So it works really well. And so, it's round, so of course I've got to get English muffins to go in there because they're round, and that's another story. We'll talk about the English muffins in a minute. But the little egg omelets I like to be round to go on there. So the egg maker, it makes the egg round for me. Before I had this egg maker, I was making my own omelets, and I would bake them in these little round dishes so that they can be round to go in my egg round. It's really not that important for it to be round, but that's why I'm doing it in here.
Picture perfect.
Yeah. So again, this is another thing that I like to make ahead of time because the little omelets will freeze well. And so I bake them and then pop them out and then put them onto a sheet pan and freeze them. Once they're frozen, I put them into a Ziploc bag and then can pull that out of the freezer, microwave it on a plate, put it on a toasted bread or muffin or anything. You can put this on anything, and a little piece of cheese, and then I'm good to go. So that's why that's where this one came from. And again, in order to kind of not get bored and have a variety of things, I do all sorts of different veggies and fillings and things in the eggs and omelets. So what I'm doing today is we're doing a little onion and mushroom and some spinach. And then we'll do Swiss cheese on top, and that's what we've got for you to sample today. When we did the omelets we did for the samples, we baked in a large pan and just cut them. So they're square on a round bread. It's disappointing, but it'll be delicious. So I'm just sauteing my veggies up. I'm going to scramble my eggs.
Eggs. They got a bad rap.
They do.
They're recovering still.
We're getting there.
I can't tell you how many people come up to me and say eggs are bad. Eggs are not bad.
Eggs are wonderful.
Eggs are wonderful. And they have this lovely nutrient called choline. And choline is one of those nutrients that those researchers at the Nutrition Research Institute are studying that's been associated with brain health and function. So, and also some eye development there as well has been associated with choline. So choline found in eggs. It's also found in meat and poultry and other fatty foods. Technically the body makes choline, but we make it in very small amounts, so we need to eat it in order to get enough of it. And they're actually studying a little bit of that too at the Nutrition Research Institute, like how different factors affect the dietary requirement among individuals of specifically choline. So it's important that we have this research going on so that we understand more and more about these really important nutrients that are associated with these great things like better brain health and better eye health. Yeah.
Have there been any studies about people who had traumatic brain injuries and the effect that nutrition has on their healing?
Have there been any studies on traumatic brain injuries and the effect nutrition has on healing? Yes, but I don't know tons of specifics about that. So we're cooking up the eggs.
So I'm just sauteing my vegetables here. I want to get a little bit brown. And then I'm going to add my spinach in. So we've got spinach today. I do this with kale. I do this with peppers. Sometimes I'll dice a little ham into it as well, or another meat. So it's just really variable. There's so many things you can do with this and so many flavors you could put in there. Yeah.
Can you talk to us about what kind of spray you used and why?
And why? Why is because I forgot my oil, and the spray was here. But I can tell you, this is actually a pretty nice one that we're using. It's canola oil, and I don't believe it has any of like the propellant in it. So I do like the one that we use. But normally when I do this, I would use a little olive oil or whatever fat you like in the pan. I just didn't want to go run back and get my oil. Yes.
What's the best way to eat eggs to get the most nutrients?
What is the best way to eat eggs to get the most nutrients? Anyway.
Anyway?
Yeah, just cook them up anyway. Any way you like them. Some people really don't like them scrambled. Some people do. The one thing I did want to say about eggs is some people ask, is there a nutritional difference between the brown egg and a white egg or whatever other color egg you get if you get farm fresh eggs? The answer is no, there isn't really a big nutritional difference. The difference comes in sometimes the farmer will feed a hen a specific nutrient to enhance their diet, and that hen will pass along those enhanced nutrients to the egg. So for example, you often see in the grocery store omega-3 eggs, and that's because the hen ate an omega-3 rich diet, and now that egg has omega-3s in it. Make sense? But just normal everyday eggs, brown, white, whatever color they might be, have pretty much the same nutritional content. And they're really great. They only have 70 calories in one little egg. They also have some vitamin D in them, which is really hard to get in through the food that we eat. So eat your eggs. Yes?
Do you know if there's any difference between cooking eggs on high heat or low heat?
Difference between cooking eggs on high heat or low heat.
Yeah, so if you cook them on high heat, they actually cook faster. I mean, that sounds like it. I mean, that makes sense, right? But they tend to overcook faster. And so, how do I explain this? This is something we actually talk about in my baking class a lot. It's faster than proportional. So they actually cook very, very fast when you cook them over high heat. You know, I think in most cases you just don't want to cook an egg to the point where it, separates, and a lot of times the water will start to leak out of an egg if it's been overcooked. Like if you're making a custard in the oven and you bake it at a high temperature, it's much more likely to curdle. And so it's just not appetizing that way.
Nutrition-wise, though, any difference?
I don't know if there's any loss of
I think
nutrition.
so.
No.
No, I don't know if there's anything in there.
I mean, maybe a water
soluble
yeah.
that might evaporate, but
Yes.
Let me see. I'm trying to watch my cholesterol. So which part of the egg, the yolk or the white of the egg, has the most choline?
So the choline is found in the yolk, in the fatty part, but I'm going to tell you that you can eat eggs even if you have high cholesterol. So our dietary cholesterol, which eggs got a bad rap for, does not directly have an input on our blood cholesterol. So the saturated fat that we eat, which an egg does have some of, trans fat that we eat, which is kind of being moved out of the food supply, those things affect our blood cholesterol more than dietary cholesterol. Now, I will say that if you do have a super high cholesterol, because your body's going to make cholesterol whether or not you eat it. Like you could eat no cholesterol at all, and your body's going to make it because we need it for a lot of different things. It's important. But if you have a really super high cholesterol, then maybe you need to, not go overboard on things that have cholesterol in them. But in general, we know that dietary cholesterol is not having a direct impact on that blood cholesterol. So you don't have to worry too much about it. Yes?
Could you comment on chicken versus duck eggs?
Chicken eggs versus duck eggs.
yeah, duck eggs are bigger, of course. And I think they have more yolk to white proportionally, so they're very rich. They're a little perhaps higher in fat, again in terms of just proportionality of the yolk to white, but they're delicious. They're very, very good. They're very rich. There are some local producers doing duck eggs. They're getting a little more popular, so you're finding them at the farmers market now these days. So that's kind of exciting. As a culinarian trying to, I like to get new ingredients and things that haven't always been as available here. We're getting a lot more of those things these days, so it's exciting. Yeah.
What about coconut oil in baking and cooking?
Coconut oil in baking and cooking.
Yeah, I mean, so in a lot of ways, it's going to function very well. It's a solid fat. It is a saturated fat. So, I think that the science is not necessarily all together there in terms of
Yeah, it's a little wishy-washy because the type of saturated fat is actually a medium chain triglyceride, and we're finding that a medium chain triglyceride, if this is exotic information for you, but that it's utilized in the body a little bit different than maybe the short chains and the long chains. So that's where coconut oil differs a little between some of the other saturated fats. So yes, it still is a saturated fat, and I think a lot of people think it's sort of the miracle fat. We should be using it in place of every other fat, but I wouldn't go that far yet. It definitely has some health benefits to it. Of course, it's probably got some antioxidants in it as well, but I would just use it in moderation, just like you would any other type of oil. We don't want to be dousing or eating coconut oil by the spoonful.
And it's delicious. I mean, and it works well in a lot of applications. If people are vegan and trying not to use animal products in baked goods, there's not much in the way of another solid fat that is natural, right? So you can go shortening, but it's not necessarily a natural fat, and so coconut oil works well. It does have a fairly low melting point, so if you're really rubbing through something, it's going to start to melt a lot faster, a little faster than butter will.
And it's always going to taste like coconut. So if
Yeah,
you don't
you
want
don't
something to
have
taste
flavor.
like coconut, it will.
Could you use that coconut oil in lieu of the cooking spray or olive oil that you suggested with the eggs?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, in the pan, you can use any kinds of oil. Avocado oil I've been using lately, that works well, and that has a very nice smoke point. So even I've found that coconut will start to smoke at a certain temperature, but the avocado seems to go up to a much higher temperature, which is nice. And it's a monounsaturated fat, so I like that. And again, I tell my students, variety is one of the things that we really need to strive for in a diet, and that goes with the fat as well. So I don't only use butter, but I use a variety of fats. I wouldn't only use coconut oil, but I use different fats in different applications.
The avocado oil and olive oil as far as its health benefits.
The question was olive oil and avocado oil, what are the health benefits?
Yes.
Comparison between the two.
Could one get as many benefits from the avocado oil as from the olive oil?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, I don't know off the top of my head the exact proportion of how, so, we refer to different oils as monounsaturated fat or polyunsaturated fat, but really all those fats have a little bit of each of those fats, if that makes sense. You've got some mono and some poly, but the difference is in the amounts, right? So avocado oil has mostly monounsaturated fat. It's got a little polyunsaturated in there, as with olive oil. So I don't know the proportions and how different they are. There's going to be some components in that oil that are different, that come from the olive, that come from the avocado, that are, specific to those, the antioxidants, if you will, that are going to be different. But overall, I think they're pretty comparable.
Yeah. And the avocado doesn't really have a very strong flavor, so that might be better in some ways than like an extra virgin olive oil that has that strong olive oil flavor. But I have found them to be both really comparable in terms of cooking and the function of the.
I was asking because I have substituted or started using avocado oil instead of the olive oil, and olive oil has such a fine reputation for health. So I was wondering if I was making a mistake.
Oh no, I don't think you're making a mistake. They're very comparable in their fat profile. They're both, an olive and an avocado. Well, an avocado is really the only fresh fruit source of monounsaturated fat. Olive technically isn't fresh, but it's sort of like, you don't eat fresh olives. So they're both fruits. Now, oils coming from fruits, and they're very similar in their monounsaturated fat content. Any other questions before we move to the assembly line?
This is the easy one, but kind of the fancy one. So, when I think fancy breakfast, we do bagels and lox a lot, and we do cream cheese and, the capers and the red onion. So, thinking about something that's perhaps a little bit healthier for not only your heart, but also your brain. The avocado is a great fat, just like we were talking about. So maybe a little better for us than the cream cheese, right? But I'm using it in the same way because it's very creamy. It's got this wonderful mouthfeel. So I'm basically just going to make my bagel and lox with cream cheese, but with avocado. And then when I use avocado, I need lime. So a little lime vinaigrette that we just whisked up. Very simple. I didn't think you guys needed to see a vinaigrette today. You're good with vinaigrette. And just to talk a little bit about the bread we're using today, it's an English muffin. I've been working on this homemade English muffin recipe. I included it for you. I didn't demo it again because I know not everybody is going to make their own English muffins. It's a little wacko, right? But again, I got the sandwich maker, and it's got the English muffin. And so, but I went to the store to get the English muffins because I haven't purchased English muffins in a long time. And then I looked at the label and I thought, I don't know, I hope nobody here makes English muffins. And I don't mean to insult anyone, but you know, there's a lot of things in there that I don't put in my English muffins, right? I put flour and water and salt and yeast, and that's about it. But you know, they're using lots of artificial flavors and preservatives and even the artificial sweeteners in there, or the Splenda, which I guess you can make a case is not necessarily an artificial sweetener, but I really didn't like the flavor. And the only whole wheat English muffin I could find has cinnamon in it, which doesn't really go with an egg sandwich, right? So I started making these English muffins. They're pretty simple. They're, you know, the work part of an English muffin is a little bit tedious in terms of using the griddle, but I make the dough at night. I put it in the fridge. It's ready to go the next morning, and then you just round up the rolls and then flatten them, put them on the griddle with a little cornmeal. We've used a nice sprouted cornmeal grit here as our base. So it's a little bit bigger than the ones that you'll find at the grocery store. The cornmeal that they're using is a little finer. So this is giving you a little more crunch. And then we used a nice local whole wheat flour in this one from Carolina Ground Mill in Asheville. So that's very nice. But you could use whatever kind of sandwich bread you like on this one. You can do the bagel. You can do, because it's maybe a little bit of a Latin flavor profile, this would be a great tostada. I like tostadas for breakfast. And you know, I also like those little sandwich thins. Those aren't bad either. So those would work really well for this. Or even just a plain old piece of bread, right? Nicely toasted, and then we're going to put our ingredients on and just make a little fancy dish for you that you're going to get to taste today as well. But tell us about the salmon.
Yeah, so salmon, what's its claim to fame? Anybody? Omega-3s, great, yay! So omega-3s are the fat that we don't get enough of. I think it's drilled into our heads, we need to eat more omega-3s, and really we want to get those omega-3s from fatty fish sources. Now we can get omega-3s from plant-based sources like walnuts and flaxseed, but it's a different type of omega-3 and our body needs to convert it into the type of omega-3 that's in the salmon already, and it's really an inefficient process, so you're just better off eating it right from the salmon. But if you don't eat salmon or other fatty fish like herring or trout or sardines or anchovies or whatever the other fatty fishes are, then by all means eat the plant-based sources, that's totally fine too. But we know that omega-3s are associated with a whole host of health benefits, including some brain health, and Dr. Cheatham at the Nutrition Research Institute is also studying omega-3s, and specifically what's important about omega-3s, not only that we want to eat a lot of them, but we want to make sure that we balance out this ratio between omega-3s and omega-6s. So omega-3s are in your fatty fish, and you got omega-6s, which are in your like vegetable oil. So most Americans consume like 20 times the amount of omega-6s than they do omega-3s. And really we want that ratio to be closer to 1 to 1. Right? So we want to bring that omega-6 ratio, omega-6 level down and bring up that omega-3 level and even them out a bit, and that's where we see those cognitive improvements. Specifically in children, that's what Dr. Cheatham's looking at, is like the children, she's studying, I believe, ages 7 to 9, and when they're given these higher intakes of omega-3s, then they see some enhanced performance on like, you know, memory, recall, attention, things like that. So omega-3s are good if you haven't gotten that already. For its heart health benefits, but also for its brain health benefits, yes.
If you don't eat fish, do the vitamins work just as well?
Yes, so fish oil is just as good. If you don't eat fish specifically, there's also some vegetarian fish type oil. It's not fish, but it's vegetarian omega-3s as well. I believe it comes from algae, so that works as well if you don't eat the fish source, yes.
2 questions. You mentioned omega-6s. What are omega-6s that you want?
Yeah, so omega-6s is found in our standard vegetable oils. That's really, we find it a lot in products that are already on the market, but if you're cooking with vegetable oil, we encourage you to switch to other oils. So you olive oil is going to have a little bit of omega-6 in it. the other, like I was saying before, like every oil, every fat sort of has all of the types of fats in them. They've got monounsaturated, polyunsaturated, and omega-6 is a type of polyunsaturated fat. So omega-3s and omega-6s are both the polyunsaturated. So all of your, vegetable, or all of your oils coming from plant-based sources are going to have some omega-6s in them, as well as probably a little bit omega-3s, but the vegetable oil is the one that contains the most amount of omega-6s, and that's what we generally eat the most of, and we usually find that in things that are already produced for us, and that's why the ratio is so high.
The second part of that question that I had, or second question was, I have a 2.5-year-old. I'm trying to get her to eat. She's got some brain injuries going on right now. What can I do to get more omega-3s in her without more of the bonefish and vitamins here? Salmon.
Yeah, so the question is, how do you get more omega-3s in a small child? Yes, salmon is maybe difficult among small children.
Hard sell.
What?
That's a hard sell for a 2-year-old.
Yes, it is a hard sell. So,
But I need it, so just,
Yeah.
I've got the supplements I'm giving,
Yes.
fish, vitamin
Yep,
supplements from CVS.
Mhm.
I know vitamin industry is unregulated. I
Well,
don't even know if I'm.
it's regulated differently. It's regulated differently. So it's not that it's unregulated, it's just regulated a little bit differently. Now, if you're buying vitamins from a reputable source, so I would look for a verification on that supplement pack. You can look for what we call USP. USP verified, it's like a third-party certification. It's going to mean that companies sending their product out, it's getting third-party verified so that it comes back and says, this product has exactly what it says it has. That's a good first place to start. But most of the bigger brands, Bayer, Nature Made, thank you. Like some of those bigger brands are very reputable companies, so I wouldn't worry too much about them. I would just worry about buying things like online from a source you don't really know of. But yes, the supplement is a great, easy way to get it in. You can also do those plant-based sources too, like maybe you make a smoothie and you throw in some flaxseed oil or something like that. That would be also a nice way to sort of throw it in there without it having to taste fishy. And like I said, you can still get it in via those plant-based sources. It just needs to be converted in the body, and so you just need a little bit more of them versus if we just, got in our omega-3s, and that would be easier, or via the fish, that's faster.
I make a really good waffle with pumpkin and flax meal in it, so ground flax in it, and you could probably do flax oil in there also.
Yeah, I would encourage actually the flax meal better because the flax oil goes rancid very quickly.
Okay, yeah.
So I would encourage the flax meal instead, plus it's really expensive, the oil is super
Yeah.
expensive.
Okay, so the meal is great. I got a huge bag of the ground flax meal at one of the big stores, the membership stores, and used it in a lot of things. So like you said, in smoothies even.
Yeah, and you just store that ground flax meal in the freezer so it doesn't spoil, because it's definitely an oil that will go rancid quickly if you don't keep it in the right. Yeah.
But yeah, you could do that you could add that to the oatmeal, you could add that to smoothies, you can add it, put on cereal,
Mhm.
and you put it into your baked goods. You can substitute a little bit of the flour in a baked good with some of the flax meal, and that'll work really well. You wouldn't do 100% of the flour, but you can do 10%, quarter of it with the flax meal, and it'll work just fine.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's the verdict on canola oil?
Canola oil is good for us. It has a lot of monounsaturated fat, which, just like avocado, is associated with heart health benefits. So definitely a good oil there.
So I'm getting ready to do my smoothie because my eggs and my oatmeal need a few more minutes in there. I've got banana and raspberry in this one. Of course, you can do all kinds of fruits in the smoothies. This is another one that I kind of have pre-set. So, the bananas, you buy the bananas, no one eats the bananas, then they turn brown, and no one really wants to eat the bananas. So I'll peel them, put them in a little bag, a little snack bag, and into the freezer, and then I use that in my smoothies with the frozen fruit. And so I like to use frozen fruit in the smoothie because then I don't have to put ice in it, which makes it watery and tasteless, right? Nobody likes that.
That's a great tip, actually, what Megan said about peeling the bananas before you put them in the freezer. freezer.
Oh,
Because I didn't used to know that, and I used to have bags of brown bananas in the freezer, and it's like the hardest thing to peel a frozen banana. So once you figured out how to peel them first and then freeze them, it's like the best idea ever. So I just wanted to say it was life-changing.
So I'm gonna blend, it's gonna be loud.
I think the best thing about smoothies is that you can put anything in them, and you just press a button and it makes itself. Yeah,
What about chia seeds?
chia seeds.
Nutrition-wise?
Chia seeds, do they have omega-3s in them?
I think they do.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm just having a brain malfunction here.
Blueberries.
Chia seeds do have omega-3s in them, I believe. I don't know how much they do, but they're becoming more. What?
Comparable to flax.
Comparable to flax seeds, thank you. I'm not up on my chia knowledge over here. I just think of chia pets when I think of it. So I just can't even eat them. That's the reason why I can't eat them. Sorry, it's just my own personal opinion, because I just think of chia pets.
They actually make a pretty nice egg substitute in some baked goods if you're trying to go, vegan or totally plant-based. Chia seeds can actually do a really good job in like muffins or cookies as an egg substitute.
And the chia bowls, I've been seeing lots of people eating chia, like smoothie bowls, and they throw the chia seeds in there. Maybe I need to get on the bandwagon. Sorry.
Chia pudding.
Chia pudding, yep, that's another good one.
Yeah, I've seen those recipes. I haven't tried the chia pudding yet. The texture and the consistency of chia gets a little bit slimy,
Slimy, yeah.
which, in Mexico, my husband is from Mexico, and they'll put chia seed in the lemonade or limeade. And so the chia in there, it's actually really nice. They don't put a ton, but it's like those bubble teas where you get that little chewy texture in your drink. If you like that sort of thing, it's kind of nice. And then certainly everybody talks about the chia expanding and kind of helping you feel full. Certainly lots of fiber in there as well.
Other questions? Yes.
Hemp, what's your opinion of hemp?
Hemp seed. Hemp used to be popular. It's not so popular anymore.
But I think it's coming back.
I think it might be coming back. Well, I don't know the nutrition profile of a hemp seed off the top of my head.
They're certainly high in fat, and I think good fat. I do have a little package of those. I've been putting those in some of my baked goods and smoothies as well. The flavor is very nice. Adds just a little bit of crunch sometimes. It goes well in granola, things like that. So we'd look up the nutritional content. I would imagine that it's along the lines of things like chia seeds and other seeds and nuts. So probably some fiber as well. It doesn't make you act goofy if you put it in there.
Test and work now.
Other questions? Other questions? Sorry, that's all right, because Megan's showing us our next.
But our omelets are ready to go. And again, generally I would toast my bread, and I would, my omelet would probably be in the freezer already, and so, I keep that up on a plate. Not quite the right spatula to get this out of the bowl here.
But it's round.
I'm just washing the heck out of it though, so it's not going to be round anymore. My spray at home works better, probably because it's not fancy non-GMO canola oil spray. And then a little piece of cheese on top. We have a little Swiss cheese on our sandwich today. And then we've got our sandwich ready to go. There. And then I've got the oatmeal. I think it's just about ready.
Oh, you actually baked it? You didn't use the magic of television?
Really ready. Not even magic of television ready.
It's crazy. Usually it's magic of television.
I know. I did have one of the omelets just in case. pretty as some of the other things, but really delicious. This is a really good one. I've definitely added this to my breakfast repertoire,
The every other day.
the every other day breakfast. I'll do my pumpkin flax waffle with peanut butter one day, and
Who's going to Megan's house for breakfast?
you can tell I love breakfast. Good stuff. All right, anybody have questions?
Brain health breakfast right there.
Stephanie, we're talking about breakfast, but I think it's interesting that neither one of you have mentioned anything about yogurt. And so is that now moving out of vogue, or is it just you just didn't talk about it today?
We didn't talk about it because it didn't have any of our fun nutrients. Actually, it probably has a little bit of choline because it is a dairy product, and as long as it has fat in it, it's going to have some choline in it. So yeah, go ahead and throw yogurt into your daily repertoire. The problem with yogurt is you have to be careful because there's a ton out there that are more like dessert than they are like actual nutrient-rich food. So I encourage you, if you like yogurt, go with maybe a Greek-style yogurt that has more protein. It's going to keep you fuller longer. And then if you need it to be sweeter, add a little bit of your own jam or honey at home versus getting the fruited variety or the honey-flavored variety in the store, because it usually probably has more than you actually need. It will tame our palates to develop a little less sweeter tolerance. But yogurt is great. It's full of calcium. It's got great protein. You've got some magnesium and phosphorus, like all the good nutrients that dairy has in it. So yeah, I encourage yogurt as a breakfast or snack or lunch or whatever option.
I was going to say, I didn't think about it for breakfast because yogurt's my afternoon snack. So that's another class.
Yes. The nutrients in kefir. So very similar to dairy, it's got to have some more of that fermented probiotic stuff in it. But it's going to have a little less protein, I think.
Maybe less than the Greek yogurt.
Yeah, less than the Greek yogurt for sure. But it's going to be very similar to some of the other yogurt products out there. But some of those probiotics, they're well, yogurt has probiotics in them too, but the strains just might be different. So if they actually list the strains on there, you could just look at what the yogurt says versus what the kefir says.
Yeah, but sometimes I'll use kefir in the smoothie instead of milk, or I add yogurt in there. We did non-dairy in the smoothie today, so there's just lots and lots of different options.
Yes.
Is cottage cheese along the same line as yogurt?
So cottage cheese has a lot of protein in it. Probably more protein than, definitely more protein than regular yogurt. Maybe a little bit more protein than plain Greek yogurt. I'm just guessing. They might be very, very similar. And then it's just going to be different in the way that it tastes. I wouldn't tell you to use cottage cheese in place of things that have yogurt in them because cottage cheese is much saltier and it's going to sort of add that real salty flavor to it and probably wouldn't taste good.
Super savory stuff.
Yeah.
And if you like it, absolutely.
Yes.
Are you going to email us the recipe for your pumpkin waffle?
I'm thinking if I should mention that or not. That might be another class.
Yeah, maybe we'll do it the next one somehow.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Yes.
What I love bacon.
We have mango?
Bacon.
Bacon.
I didn't use bacon today.
Bacon would be perfect on any of these
On this
sandwiches.
sandwich, yeah, I do occasionally. I'll put a little bacon on there. Or you could cook it and crumble it into your omelet. That would be fine,
Just in moderation.
Bacon in moderation, yeah.
Absolutely.
Definitely not an everyday food, but in every third, fourth day food. Once a week. Depends if you only need half a slice on an egg sandwich or something. It's all, it's about the portion size too. So if you're only eating a couple of bacon bits crumbled in your omelet, then, make a whole package of bacon and crumble it up and you use it as sparingly as possible, but nothing wrong with bacon.
When you said yogurt as your afternoon snack, that made me want to ask what is kind of like the verdict on snacking, or the whole 5 meals a day versus 3, or?
Question is, snacking, so should we be eating 5 meals a day, 3 meals a day? The answer is whatever works for you. There is no conclusive evidence to say that one is better than the other. It really depends on who you are and what works for you. If you're a person that needs to graze, by all means graze. But there's as far as like weight loss and weight maintenance goes, there's no one way that's better than the other.
I mean, I would say having, the weight loss experience behind me, the snacking was really crucial for me to be able to not get hungry and not eat up, not just go run to Bojangles and get a big old biscuit because I'm hungry, right? So, I think it's really important to make sure that I'm eating the right amount of calories every few hours. So, weight is all about total calories in versus calories out. And as long as you're below a certain number of calories, you're either going to lose weight or not gain weight. And the quality of the calorie doesn't matter for weight loss and weight gain, but what it matters for is how you feel, and for things like brain health, heart health, making sure that you're getting really great quality calories, I think is important for long-term health. But in terms of the weight loss, it's just calories.
Other questions? Yes.
One last question. Are sugars really bad for the brain, or are they good, or has there been any research or evidence with regards to, try to cook with less sugar or have less sugar to someone who's had a brain injury?
So I don't know that there's any research to say that sugar is bad for the brain. Sugar in general, too much of it is not necessarily great for us. So we want to keep added sugars to a minimum in general for overall health. But there's no research to say that sugar is bad for brain health.
Yeah, I mean, your brain runs on glucose, right? So sugar is
That's not to say we should be injecting ourselves with sugar, right?
Yeah, I think it's the total amount that we need to control.
I've had some doctors tell me to place my daughter on a ketogenic diet, and I've been a little hesitant. One doctor said it, the other couple are like, no, this is a top of just get food intake.
So it really depends. I mean, that's definitely a medical situation. Ketogenic diets have been shown to be very beneficial for specifically children who experience many seizures. That's sort of where ketogenic diets jumped off from, and very beneficial and great results. Ketogenic diets are being studied more widely now in terms of other health benefits, but really where ketogenic diets really jumped off of was children and seizures, and really lessening those seizures. Ketogenic diet, sorry, that's a good question. A ketogenic diet is a very, very high fat diet. Very low carb, but it's also pretty minimal in protein as well. It's extremely high in fat. What happens is you eat so much fat that your body has to learn to run off of what we call ketone bodies, which are derivatives of the digestion process when we break down fat. So it's teaching your body to utilize not glucose and utilize these ketone bodies. And really that's your brain can only use glucose, but it can also use these ketone bodies, and it's getting it into a specific state, which is ketogenesis. That's sort of very simplified, but it's a very, very high fat diet. It sort of transitions how your metabolism works.
A little complex in terms of how to maintain it.
Yes, it's definitely not an easy thing to do. And to actually be in ketogenesis, you have to maintain a very, very, very low amount of carbohydrates. And really, if you come out of ketogenesis, then you're not experiencing the benefits. So if you're following this type of diet, you have to actually test your urine or your blood to know that you're actually in it. Other questions? We're right on time. Awesome. So we got samples outside. Remember that you don't have to line up to one table. You can line up to any table that's out there, so we don't have any backup. And thank you all for coming. We look forward to seeing you at the next event.